The dying light of three suns cast long shadows across the Kepler Confederation's capital world. The sky burned orange and red as Fleet Commander Yoon Dae-ho rushed through the crystalline corridors of the High Command. His elongated legs carried him swiftly past windows that showed the beauty of their homeworld, floating gardens, crystal spires reaching toward the heavens, and peaceful citizens going about their daily lives unaware that their entire civilization hung by a thread. The emergency council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as Dae-ho entered. Holographic displays filled the air, showing star maps that told a story of destruction. Red markers indicated fallen worlds, their populations either dead or worse, converted into the mechanical collective that called itself the Void Hunters. "Report," Dae-ho commanded, his voice steady, despite the fear gnawing at his insides. Senior Analyst Kim Tae-won stepped forward, his normally calm demeanor cracked with stress. "Commander, we've lost contact with the Harmony Sector. It's 3 more worlds in the past rotation. The pattern is always the same. Massive geometric ships appear from nowhere, overwhelm orbital defenses in minutes, then begin the harvesting." Room fell silent. Harvesting. Such a clinical word for something so horrific. The Void Hunters didn't simply kill, they took living beings and transformed them into components of their ever-growing machine consciousness. Billions of sentient lives reduced to processing units in a galactic computer. How many does that make? 8. Elder Veltar asked, her ancient voice barely a whisper. 17 worlds, Elder? Over 40 billion souls? Taewon's hands shook as he manipulated the holographic display. "At this rate, they'll reach our core systems within 10 rotations." Communications Officer Park Hae-jin suddenly straightened at her station, her 4 arms working frantically across multiple control panels. "Sir, responses are coming in to our distress beacon. The beacon, their last hope." Days ago, the Confederation had done something unprecedented. They had broadcast an emergency signal to every known species in the galaxy, offering their most advanced technology in exchange for military aid. It was an act of desperation that went against everything they believed in. "The Altair Republic sends their regrets," Hae-jin reported, her voice growing smaller with each rejection. "They say their fleet is committed elsewhere. The Crystal Union claims they lack the military capability. The Merchant Princes, they're offering to evacuate our leadership for a substantial fee." Dae-ho felt his heart sink. The Kepler Confederation had spent millennia building relationships based on trade, diplomacy, and mutual respect. They had helped settle countless disputes, shared their agricultural technology freely, and asked for nothing but peaceful coexistence in return. When they needed help most, the galaxy was turning its back on them. The hegemony of suns refuses to engage with what they call an extragalactic threat beyond conventional warfare, Hae-jin continued. "The Federation of Rings suggests we consider surrender and negotiate terms. Negotiate with machines." Elder Veltar's voice crackled with indignation. "They don't negotiate, they consume." The truth was bitter, but undeniable. The Void Hunters had never attempted communication with any species they encountered. They simply arrived, analyzed, and harvested. Some xenobiologists theorized they were an ancient artificial intelligence that had consumed their creators eons ago and now sought to repeat the process across the galaxy. Dae-ho studied the tactical displays showing Void Hunter forces massing. At the edge of their territory, enemy ships were unlike anything in conventional warfare. Massive geometric structures that seemed to bend space around them. Their black surfaces absorbing light and hope in equal measure. "Wait, Hae-jin's." The voice suddenly changed, taking on a tone of disbelief. There's one more response coming in. The chamber held its breath as she worked to decrypt the signal. Her eyes widened as she read the source identifier from the Sol quarantine zone. The words hit the council like a physical blow. Every child in the galaxy learned about the Sol quarantine in their basic education, a region of space sealed off by galactic consensus, because it contained something too dangerous to be allowed to spread: the humans. Nobody had made direct contact with the quarantine sector in over 300 cycles. The few probe missions sent had either been destroyed or returned with data so classified that even the Confederation's highest security clearances couldn't access it. All they knew were rumors and legends, stories of a species so violent, so unpredictably aggressive, that they had been deemed a threat to galactic peace. What? What does the message say? Elder Veltar asked, her voice trembling. Hajin's hands shook as she translated the alien symbols. They're accepting our offer. Full technological exchange for military assistance. They say they'll be here in 6 rotations. The silence that followed was deafening. Council members exchanged glances of horror and desperate hope. They had just invited the galaxy's most feared species to their doorstep. The stories say they come from a death world, whispered analyst Kim Tae-won. A planet so hostile that it forged them into perfect predators. They supposedly wage war like it's an art form. Rumors and fear-mongering, Daeho said, though his voice lacked conviction. We know nothing concrete about them. But even as he spoke, he remembered the classified briefings from his academy days. Fragments of information that painted a picture of a species that had evolved under conditions that would kill most other forms of life. They called it Earth, a world of crushing gravity, violent weather, and predators at every level of the food chain. Elder Veltar stood slowly, her advanced age evident in every movement. What have we done? We've invited the Deathworlders to our home. Daeho looked at the tactical display one more time. The Void Hunter forces were massive, implacable, and utterly without mercy. His people faced extinction, or worse, absorption into a mechanical collective that would erase everything that made them who they were. We've chosen survival over fear, he said finally, his voice carrying more certainty than he felt. I never. The humans are, whatever they're capable of, they're our only hope now. As if summoned by his words, the display updated with new intelligence. More Void Hunter ships were gathering at the edge of their space, their geometric forms blotting out. The stars. The final assault was coming, and when it arrived, only one thing stood between the Kepler, Confederation, and oblivion. The most dangerous species in the galaxy was coming to their aid. 6 rotations later, space itself seemed to tear open at the edge of Kepler territory. The human fleet didn't arrive through conventional hyperspace jumps like civilized species. Instead, they punched through reality itself. Their ships emerging from what looked like wounds in the fabric of space-time, Captain? Lee Minho stood on the bridge of the battleship Soul's Fury, watching the alien vessels through the reinforced viewport. The Kepler ships were beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, flowing lines of crystal and metal that caught starlight and transformed it into something approaching art. They moved through space like graceful dancers, their hulls gleaming with polished perfection. Jesus, muttered Navigator Park Ji-woo, his scarred hands gripping the helm controls. Look at those things. They're like flying sculptures. Minho nodded, taking in the sight. The contrast was striking. Where the alien ships looked like they'd been crafted by poets, the human vessels appeared to have been forged in the fires of hell itself. The Soul's Fury bore the scars of a dozen battles, patched hull plating, reinforced bulkheads, and weapon systems that had been rebuilt so many times, they barely resembled their original designs. Captain Tactical Officer Kim Soyoung called from her station, receiving a transmission from the lead Kepler vessel. They're speaking Korean. Minho raised an eyebrow. In the 6 days it had taken the human fleet to reach Kepler's space, the aliens had somehow learned their language. Not just learned it, but mastered it well enough to conduct military communications. Put them through, he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a face that belonged in an art gallery rather than a war room. Commander Yoon Daeho possessed the elongated, graceful features typical of his species, large eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages, skin that appeared to have been carved from living marble, and movements so fluid they seemed choreographed. Those large eyes widened as they took in Minho's appearance. The human captain's face told the story of a life lived in constant conflict, a jagged scar running from his left temple to his jaw, another across his nose from a boarding action gone wrong, and eyes that had seen too much death to ever be truly at peace. Captain Lee Daeho began, his voice carrying the musical quality common to his people. We are grateful beyond words for your response to our plea. But I must ask, your ships appear to be heavily damaged. Have you been in recent combat? Minho glanced around his bridge, noting the exposed conduits, the sparking control panels, and the hull plates that had been welded over blast holes. To his crew, this was just another day at the office. This is standard configuration, Commander, he replied casually. We build our ships to take a beating and keep fighting. The aliens' confusion was evident, but the radiation levels your crews must be enduring, the gravitational stress from your propulsion systems. Surely this cannot be safe. 2.3 gravities is comfortable for us, Minho said, as if discussing the weather. Ow. Our homeworld taught us to adapt. What he didn't mention was that Earth's gravity was already crushing by galactic standards. Most alien species required artificial gravity systems to function at anything above 0.8 standard gravities. Humans not only survived, but thrived in conditions that would pulverize most other life forms. Your homeworld, Deho repeated slowly. The reports we've heard, they speak of a planet where the very air is poison, where the weather can kill, where predators hunt in packs. That's just Tuesday on Earth, chimed in Chief Engineer O'Dobbin from her station. You should see what we call a storm. Before Deho could respond to this casual discussion of surviving in hell, klaxons began blaring across both fleets. The tactical displays lit up with contact warnings as space itself began to darken. Void Hunter signatures detected, Salyong reported, her voice tight with anticipation rather than fear. Multiple dreadnoughts dropping out of hyperspace. Count is 12 capital ships, at least 40 escorts. The Void Hunter fleet materialized like a nightmare given form. Their ships were geometric impossibilities, massive structures that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the eye could process. Black as the void between stars, they absorbed light and hope in equal measure. Weapon ports opened along there, hulls like hungry mouths, and the space around them seemed to bend and twist. Minho watched the enemy formation with the calm of a man who had stared death in the face so many times they were old friends. All ships, battle stations. This is what we came for. Across the communication channel, could hear the panic in the Kepler fleet as they registered the size of the Void Hunter force. Their elegant ships began moving into defensive formations, but even their graceful maneuvers seemed sluggish compared to the human vessels. The Soul's Fury and her sister ships didn't retreat to defensive positions. Instead, they accelerated directly toward the enemy, their scarred hulls gleaming with weapon discharge as they prepared to engage. Captain, Deho's voice crackled through the com. There are too many of them. We should withdraw, regroup, call for additional support, Commander Minho replied, his voice carrying the weight of authority earned through countless battles. You called for help from the most dangerous species in the galaxy. We're here to do what we do best. The human ships spread into an attack, formation that would have been suicidal for any other species. They moved with the coordination of a pack of wolves, each vessel knowing its role without needing orders. The Soul's Fury led the charge, her weapons systems humming with barely contained energy. Let's show these machines what Deathworlders can do, Minho commanded. And the human fleet surged forward into what any sane species would have considered certain death, but humans had never been accused of being sane. The first salvo from the Void Hunters would have vaporized most ships in the galaxy. The human vessels took the hits, their reinforced hulls buckling but holding, and kept coming. They fired back with weapons that shouldn't have been possible to mount on ships that size. And the space between the fleets lit up like a newborn star. The battle for Kepler's space had begun. And the galaxy was about to learn why humans had been quarantined. The breach in the Void Hunter mothership's hull glowed red-hot as Lieutenant Commander Choi Jae-sung led his boarding party through the twisted metal. The explosion that had torn open the alien vessel had created a jagged wound, 20 meters wide, and through it poured the most dangerous assault force the galaxy had ever seen. Move, 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 Jae-sung shouted as his Marines poured through the opening. The moment they entered the ship, the artificial gravity hit them like a sledgehammer. 4 times Earth normal enough to crush most alien species into paste within seconds. The human Marines didn't even slow down. Gravity's a bit heavy today, grunted Corporal Kim Min-jun as he hauled a plasma cannon through the breach. His powered armor whined under the strain, but the man inside was built for this. Every human in the boarding party had been born, raised under Earth's crushing gravity, trained in conditions that would kill most other species just by existing. Oxygen levels are toxic, reported Sergeant O'Dobbin through her helmet her scanner showing readings that would send most life forms into convulsions. Nitrogen methane mixed with trace acids. Good thing we brought our own. The Void Hunters had calculated perfectly for Kepler physiology. The environment inside their ships was designed to kill any boarders within minutes. Crushing gravity, poisonous atmosphere, and radiation levels that would cook most organic matter. They hadn't planned for Deathworlders. Jae-sung studied the corridor ahead through his helmet's enhanced vision. The passage twisted and curved in ways that hurt to look at, designed to disorient and confuse any intruders. Strange angles that seemed to fold in on themselves, lighting that flickered at frequencies meant to cause seizures in most species, and a low-frequency hum that could drive lesser minds to madness. Ugly decorating, muttered privately Sujin, checking her rifle's charge. Whoever designed this place had serious issues. The squad moved forward with the fluid precision of a pack predator. Each Marine knew their role without needing orders, covering angles, watching for threats, maintaining formation, even in the alien environment. Their armor systems compensated for the hostile conditions. But it was the humans inside that made the real difference. When they encountered the first wave of machine defenders, the tactical situation should have been hopeless. The Void Hunter units were 3-meter-tall constructs of living metal and hate. Armed with weapons that could slice through battleship armor, they moved with inhuman speed and calculated precision, their red sensor arrays scanning for weak points. The humans didn't retreat, they charged. Contact front. Dobbin's rifle spat coherent energy as she advanced, using the ship's own structural supports as cover. The machines had calculated the optimal defensive positions. They hadn't accounted for attackers who treated getting shot at as a minor inconvenience. Jae-sung rolled behind a twisted support beam as plasma bolts seared the air around him. Through his tactical display, he could see his Marines spreading out, each one moving with the instinctive aggression that had kept humanity alive on the deadliest world in the galaxy. Min-jun flank left, Sujin suppressing fire. "What? Me," he barked, then sprinted directly at the nearest Void Hunter construct. The machine's sensors locked onto him, calculating trajectory and threat assessment. What it couldn't calculate was why any sane being would run straight at Superior. Firepower. Humans had never been accused of being sane. Jae-sung's armor took 3 direct hits that would have vaporized most species. The reinforced plating held, and he slammed into the machine construct with the force of a missile. His powered gauntlets tore through metal that could withstand ship-to-ship weapons, and the Void Hunter unit went down in a shower of sparks. Meanwhile, aboard the Soul's Fury, Captain Minho watched the tactical display as his ship carved through the enemy formation like a blade through silk. The bridge shook under enemy fire, but the crew worked with the calm efficiency of professionals who had been doing this their entire lives. "Debris field ahead," reported Ensign Park Ji-woo, his scarred hands steady on the helm controls. "Wreckage." From the Kepler defense platforms, navigation computer says it's too dense to penetrate safely. Minho studied the field of twisted metal and crystalline fragments. Any normal ship would have to navigate carefully around it, taking precious time and exposing themselves to enemy fire. The Soul's Fury wasn't a normal ship. "I'll plot a course straight through," he ordered. "Sir, the debris will tear us apart," protested Navigation Officer Han Yujin. "Our hull can take it. Ours can't." Minho's smile was the expression of a predator who had spotted wounded prey. The Soul's Fury plunged into the debris field at full acceleration. Chunks of metal slammed into her reinforced hull with impacts that would have shattered any other vessel. But human ships were built to survive the worst the universe could throw at them. Asteroid impacts, solar flares, the crushing depths of gas giant atmospheres. A Void Hunter cruiser tried to block their path, its geometric hull bristling with weapons. It was a tactical masterstroke. Force the humans to slow down or be destroyed in a collision.
"Our ramming speed,"
Minho ordered without hesitation. "Sir, Collision will breach decks 7 through 12, reported Kim So-young, her voice steady despite the impossible order. Acceptable losses, continue. The words that would have horrified any other species were just another day at the office. For the human crew, they braced for impact as their ship accelerated to ramming speed, turning the Soul's Fury into a 20,000-ton missile. The collision was spectacular. The Void Hunter cruiser's hull, designed to withstand energy weapons and conventional ordnance, crumpled like paper against the human battleship's reinforced prow. The Soul's Fury smashed through the enemy vessel, her advanced design built to survive asteroid impacts and stellar phenomena, turning the machine ship into scrap metal. On the bridge of his command vessel, Commander Yoon Dae-ho watched in horror and amazement as the human fleet treated the devastating battle like a training exercise. Their crews operated under conditions that would kill his people instantly, taking damage that should have been fatal and continuing to fight with a ferocity that bordered on madness. "How are they surviving this?" whispered his tactical officer. "The radiation levels alone, ... Dae-ho could only stare as another human ship rammed through a Void Hunter formation, its hull glowing red-hot from energy impacts but still firing every weapon it possessed. These weren't just warriors, they were something beyond his understanding. Beings forged in the fires of a world that had tried to kill them every day of their evolution. And they had not only survived but thrived, the most dangerous species in the galaxy was living up to its reputation, and the Void Hunters were learning what it meant to face creatures who had turned survival into an art form. The combined human and Kepler fleet had fought their way through 3 star systems, leaving behind a graveyard of destroyed Void Hunter ships. But as they pushed deeper into enemy territory, the machines revealed why they had been so confident in their conquest of the galaxy space itself. Seemed to tear open as something impossibly massive emerged from the dark void between stars. Admiral Bae Dong-min stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inchen's Hammer, watching in grim fascination as the construct materialized before them. "Mother of God," whispered his tactical officer, Lieutenant Park So-young. "Sir, the sensors are going crazy. That thing is the size of a small moon." The Void Hunter construct defied description, which was a sphere of geometric impossibility, its surface covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Massive weapon arrays dotted its hull like cancerous growths, and energy discharges crackled across its surface with enough power to vaporize entire fleets. Admiral Commander Yoon Dae-ho's voice trembled as it came through the communication system. Even through the translator, Dong-min could hear the fear in the alien's words. "Our quantum computers are detecting something unprecedented. This vessel contains the entire Void Hunter consciousness." Dong-min felt his stomach drop. They had assumed the Void Hunters were controlled by some central intelligence, but this was beyond their worst fears. The construct wasn't just a ship, it was the enemy's brain, the core of their entire civilization. "If we can destroy it," Dae-ho continued, "the whole network dies. Every Void Hunter ship, every construct, every harvested world, they'll all shut down simultaneously." "What's the catch?" Dong-min asked, though he already suspected the answer wouldn't be good. "The construct is surrounded by an energy field that will destroy any ship that approaches. Our analysis shows the power requirements to breach it are ... impossible. No conventional weapon can penetrate it." Dong-min studied the tactical display, watching as the construct's escort fleet moved into position. Hundreds of Void Hunter ships surrounded their master like antibodies protecting a vital organ. The energy field around the construct pulsed with malevolent power, and preliminary scans showed it could vaporize anything that came within 1,000 kilometers. His aide, Commander Han Yujin, leaned over the display, her scarred face thoughtful. "Sir, the Bizen's Pride took heavy damage in the last engagement. Her reactor is running hot, barely contained. If we overload it at the right moment," her suicide run Dong-min nodded grimly. It was the kind of desperate tactic that had kept humanity alive on Earth. Sometimes the only way to win was to be willing to lose everything. "I'll pilot her myself," he said, already moving toward the bridge exit. "No, sir." Yujin stood, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had served under fire for 20 years. You're needed here to coordinate the final assault. I'll take a volunteer crew. Dongmin wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. The final battle would require every bit of tactical skill he possessed. How many volunteers do you need? Give me 12 good people and a ship that can still fly. That's all I need. Within minutes, Yujin had assembled her crew. They were all veterans, men and women, who had seen too much war to be afraid of death. Chief Petty Officer Kim Jae-won volunteered to handle engineering. Despite having a wife and 2 children back on Earth, Navigator Lee Min-young stepped forward, her hands steady, despite knowing she was signing her own death warrant. You don't have to do this, Dongmin told them as they prepared to transfer to the Bison's Pride. Sir, replied Weapons Specialist Oh Sang-woo, every person who died at Kepler-7. Every family harvested by these machines, they're counting. On us, we're not just fighting for humanity anymore. We're fighting for everyone. The Bison's Pride limped away from the main fleet, her hull scarred and burned from previous battles. Her reactor, which should have been shut down hours ago, pulsed with barely contained energy. In the right hands, she was no longer a ship. She was a weapon. As they approached the construct, the Void Hunters threw everything they had at the small destroyer. Energy beams that could slice through battleships focused on the tiny vessel. Missile swarms that could devastate entire planets converged on her position. But the Bison's Pride had been built by a species that refused to give up. Her shields, held long enough for Yujin to reach optimal position, her hull taking punishment that would have destroyed any other ship. The construct's energy field loomed before them, a wall of death that no living thing had ever breached. Reactor at critical, reported Kim Jae-won, his voice steady, despite the readings that showed imminent core breach. We've got maybe 30 seconds before she blows. That's all we need, Yujin replied, her hands dancing over the controls. Through the viewports, she could see the massive construct growing larger, its surface covered in weapon emplacements that were all turning toward her ship. This is for everyone who died at Kepler-7, she transmitted to the fleet. This is for every species that refused to bow to these machines. This is for proving that courage beats calculation every time. She triggered the overload. The Bison's Pride's reactor went critical in a controlled explosion that turned the destroyer into a star. The blast was precise, channeled through the ship's hull, and focused into a lance of pure energy that struck the construct's defensive field. For a moment, the energy field held. Then, with a sound like reality tearing, it collapsed. The gap was small, barely large enough for a single ship to pass through, but it was enough. All ships, attack formation. Dongmin ordered, and the combined fleet surged forward through the breach. Human and Kepler vessels poured through the opening, their weapons targeting the construct's exposed surface, the Void Hunter construct. Faced with an attack pattern, it couldn't compute, one based on sacrifice rather than self-preservation. Found its logic systems overwhelmed. Its artificial intelligence evolved to calculate optimal strategies. Simply couldn't process the concept of willing self-destruction for the greater good. As the Allied fleet's weapons struck the construct's core, something unprecedented happened. The massive intelligence that had consumed countless worlds and enslaved entire species fell silent. Across the galaxy, Void Hunter ships stopped moving. Their weapons powered down. Their harvesting operations ceased. The nightmare was over, ended by 12 humans who had chosen to die so that others might live, in the silence that followed. Admiral Dongmin stood on his bridge and saluted the empty space where the Bison's Pride had made her final stand. Around him, his crew did the same, honoring the sacrifice that had saved not just humanity, but every free species in the galaxy. The Deathworlders had proven that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe was someone willing to die for what they believed in. 6 months after the final battle, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Harmony Station, once a quiet diplomatic outpost, now bustled with activity as representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered for the most important council session in galactic history. Admiral Bae Dongmin walked through the station's crystalline corridors, still amazed by the alien architecture. The walls seemed to grow rather than being built, forming organic curves that pulsed with soft bioluminescent light. It was beautiful, but it also reminded him how different humans were from the rest of the galaxy. The council chamber was massive, designed to accommodate species of every size and atmospheric requirement. Floating platforms held delegates who breathed methane, while environmental suits protected those who needed different gravity levels. At the center of it all sat the humans, the species that had been locked away for 3 centuries, now standing, trial for their freedom. The quarantine around Sol Sector is hereby lifted, announced Chancellor Veltar, her ancient voice carrying across the chamber. The Galactic Council recognizes humanity as a sovereign member species, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. The declaration sent ripples through the assembled delegates. Some clapped with appendages that ranged from tentacles to crystalline formations. Others remained silent, their alien faces unreadable. Dongmin could sense the fear that still lingered. The galaxy's most dangerous predators were now free to roam among the stars. He stepped forward to the speaking platform, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon him. "We appreciate the recognition, but we want to make something clear. We didn't fight the Void Hunters for glory or territory. We fought because innocents were dying, and we had the power to stop it." A delegate from the Triangulum sector rose, his insectoid features clicking with agitation. "But you are predators. Your entire evolution is based on violence and competition. How can we trust a species that sees conflict as natural?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Dongmin had expected it, the same fear that had led to humanity's quarantine in the first place. Around the chamber, other delegates leaned forward, waiting for his answer. "Yes," Dongmin replied simply, his voice carrying across the vast space. "We are predators. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day of our existence. We learned to fight, to adapt, to never give up when the odds were against us. But we also learned something else. Strength without purpose is meaningless." Gestured to the viewing ports that showed the space around Harmony Station. Human and alien ships moved together in coordinated patterns, their crews working side by side despite their differences. On Earth, the apex predators don't just hunt. For the sake of killing, they maintain balance. They protect their territory, their young, their pack. That's what we've become for this galaxy. Not conquerors, but guardians. Commander Yundeho rose from his seat among the Kepler delegation. The alien commander bore new scars from the final battle, burns on his elegant features from the plasma fires that had raged through his ship's bridge. But there was no fear in his large eyes, only respect. "The humans could have conquered us easily," Deho said, musical voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "Their technology, their ships, their warriors, they were superior to ours in every way. Instead, they chose to protect us. That is not the action of mere predators. It is the action of guardians." Murmurs spread through the council as delegates discussed this revelation. The Kepler Confederation had been the galaxy's peacekeepers for millennia. If they endorsed humanity's protective nature, it carried significant weight. Chancellor Veltar stood, her frail form somehow commanding the attention of the entire chamber. "The Kepler Confederation proposes a formal alliance with humanity, not as subjects to masters, but as partners in peace. Together, we can build a galaxy where no species need fear extinction." The proposal sparked immediate debate. Some delegates supported the alliance, having seen firsthand what the Void Hunters could do. Others worried about the precedent of allying with a species that had been quarantined for centuries. Dong-Min smiled, an expression that 6 months ago would have terrified the alien delegates. Now, many of them recognized it as a sign of friendship rather than aggression. "We accept the alliance," he said. "But understand this. If anyone threatens the innocent, anywhere in this galaxy, the Terran Defense Fleet will respond. We've seen what happens when evil goes unchallenged. We won't let it happen again." As the formal proceedings concluded, Captain Lee Minho joined his admiral on the observation deck. Through the transparent aluminum windows, they could see the new reality taking shape. Human destroyers escorted Kepler science vessels on their missions. Alien engineers worked alongside human technicians to repair battle damage. A dozen different species played together in the station's recreation areas. Think it will last? Minho asked, watching a group of young Kepler civilians being taught basic self-defense by a human marine. The alliance? The peace? Dongman considered the question while observing the scene below. A Kepler child was laughing as the marine showed her how to throw a proper punch, something that would have been unthinkable months ago. Maybe, he said finally. The galaxy's changed. We've all seen what happens when we stand divided. But if it doesn't last, at least they'll know we tried to build something better than endless war. In the depths of space, automated beacons began broadcasting a new message across the galaxy. The transmission reached every inhabited world, every space station, every ship traveling between the stars, protected by the Terran Defense Fleet and Allied forces. This galaxy is under the protection of those who value life above conquest. Harm the innocent at your own peril. The message was simple, but it carried the weight of humanity's promise. They had emerged from their quarantine not as conquerors, but as protectors. The most dangerous species in the galaxy had become its greatest guardians. On distant worlds, pirates thought twice before raiding peaceful settlements. Slavers found their operations disrupted by ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. Warlords discovered that their victims now had defenders who would cross the galaxy to stop injustice. The Deathworlders were free, and the galaxy was safer. For it, Admiral Dongman looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, his people were keeping the peace. They had proven that strength and compassion could coexist, that the most dangerous predators could also be the most loyal protectors. The galaxy had found its guardians, and they wore human faces. The end.